Hi everyone. So today we are going to talk about Nginx Ingress Controller for your Kubernetes. Okay. So what is the intention of using this Nginx Ingress Controller in order to access your application from outside of your cluster? Okay. So till now we have deployed applications like so many applications we have deployed through service like cluster IP. We have used different types of services, right? Cluster IP, node port, load balancer, external IP, external name. So these are some of the types which we have used, headless service and all. But intentionally or unintentionally, we will use this particular applications outside the cluster. We need to access, right? Not all the applications, maybe few applications, you need to allow them to be reachable from outside. So what is a solution I have on this particular Kubernetes cluster? So the solution is, first solution what we have seen in the service level is, in the service level we can use a type called node port and we can directly access from outside, which means that it looks like this, how your Ingress controller is doing it, right? So we are using a node port to expose your service from outside the cluster, which means that a port number will be opened on your cluster like any node. On all the nodes it will open this particular port number. So that's the reason I have written like this, so it belongs to the cluster. Okay, if someone is trying to reach this particular IP address with this particular port number, and then they will redirect to this particular control manager, sorry, ingress controller. Who will do this particular task is nothing but kubeproxy. So kubeproxy will direct this particular traffic on whichever node it is getting reached, whether you take a controller node IP address, public IP, or your complete node public IP address, whatever it is, that kubeproxy running on that particular node will come into picture. It will redirect the traffic coming on this particular port number to redirect to this particular service, and service will do the load balancing to the actual backend application which is running inside with this service. Okay, now this is fine, but the problem is, if you what are the disadvantages we have seen when we discussed about service is nothing but, if you try to use an output, the challenge which you face is nothing but this port number will be reserved, and unnecessarily you are exposing your cluster with the node IP address. Okay, I don't want my cluster and I don't want to expose my cluster with the IP address, right? I don't want to expose, so you are doing that. Okay, so that is not my requirement. And the second thing is, like, you are opening a port number, that port number will be opened on all the nodes. Whether the application is running on that node or not, you need to ignore. But ultimately, it will open the port number on all the nodes. Of how many nodes you are using in the cluster, on all the nodes, it will open this particular port number. So this is not a feasible solution. Why? Because always I need to modify my IP table rules and all in order to open this port number. When it is not using, I need to disable that. So it's like, keep on this administrator has to keep eye on this particular port numbers and all. So I cannot take this particular solution and make a burden on myself, right? I have to find an alternative. So other alternative which we have in service is nothing but load balancer. So load balancer, in the sense, the load balancer type of service which you are using is nothing but, it's a layer 4. Okay, it's a layer 4 load balancing. Load balancing in the sense, either if you have installed your Kubernetes cluster, you need to configure your load balancer inbuilt. It will not come by Kubernetes cluster, you have to install it. Okay, if you are using a Azure Kubernetes or AWS Kubernetes or Google Cloud Kubernetes, then inbuilt it will open that particular, when you, since you are using AKS, GKS or EKS, automatically it will bind to that particular load balancer. A IP will be assigned to that particular service. So then directly you can access. No need to configure any load balancer from your end. Automatically Kubernetes will take care of it because it has access to it. Okay, that particular load balancer service. Now the problem with that particular service type load balancer is, it doesn't know what is a domain and what need to be done, routing and all. Okay, since it is a layer 4 routing. Okay, so it has some disadvantages of domain specific. It doesn't know which domain, how to route it. Okay, path based routing and all, it doesn't have that particular capability. Okay, so that's the reason that is also not a feasible solution for us, and you will be opening so many IP addresses, right? For each and every, let's say if it is a single service, that's fine, or if it is a couple of service which you will try to use a load balancer, that's fine. But when you have large cluster, means so many applications running on that particular cluster, most of the applications you need to expose outside. Then Service type of a load balancer is bit cost, means like it should open the public IP, means like using that load balancer, and it's like every time it creates a service it will reserve the public IP, and that will cost for you, right? If you are using a public cloud. If you are using on premises, you need to configure a bare metal deployment, like you have to deploy, and that will enable some port numbers, and that also you need to get it from your network team, and that should be enabled for your NIC card, and with that help of that your traffic will flow from that particular interface. So this is a bit complex what I understand if I'm trying to use that particular service of load balancer. Then external IP, external name, it's not a feasible solution anyways, we already know it. Then what is the solution for this requirement? Is nothing but Ingress controller. Okay. So we have to use Ingress controller, and in this demo we will be looking at Nginx Ingress controller. Okay, so Nginx provided Ingress controller. So why we are using this? Because Nginx Ingress controller provides me a different types of solutions because of its layer 7 capability. It's a layer 7 capability, so which provides me so many advantages, like I can use name based routing or IP based routing or path based routing. It enables TLS based authentic what do you say, communication and all. It allows me, or it provides me so many solutions in a single this particular Ingress controller. With this particular single Ingress controller I can get these many solutions. So why can't we use that? Okay, and that is why in any production or any production servers or any companies, they use Ingress controller as a solution to expose your applications which are needed. Okay, so in our cluster I am having two nodes actually. So one is control plane and one is compute plane. Okay, so this is my control plane and this is my compute plane. Okay, so this is my cluster and it is up and running. Okay, you can say this is my Kubernetes version which I have used. Now with this, okay, with this points, okay, if you see, I'll be deploying two applications. Okay, this is one application. I'll be using deployment. With that I will create only one replica, so one pod will be created in the backend, and this particular application will be exposed through service with a type called cluster IP default. Okay, cluster IP, in the sense you already know that the IP address which is reachable within the cluster is called as cluster IP for a service. Okay, for this second application also I will do that. Okay, if you this second application also will get deployed, I will modify the index.html, so when you try to serve that you will get different what do we say a different output for each and every application. Okay, so to access this particular from outside, this access to this particular application from outside, we are deploying Nginx Ingress controller. So what it does, Nginx Ingress controller will be deployed as a deployment object with one replica, and it will be exposed as a service type of node port. I can use load balancer, but I'm not using here. For my convenient I will be using node port. Okay, in your production or in your case you have to use load balancer IP address, because it will be a public IP, so that you can add a record to your domains, because you will have your own domains, right? When I access this particular domain, it should reach to this particular application. When I access app1.sudhidevops.tld, it should reach this particular application. So how is that possible? I'm using a name based routing here. Okay, name based routing, in the sense this name will be redirected to this particular service. How is this possible? First of all, I need to add a record. Anyways, I need to purchase a domain. This domain should be registered somewhere like GoDaddy, AWS DNS, or somewhere you have to purchase, and you have to register the domain. Once a domain has been registered, you need to add a record, right? For this particular website where it is running, which a record you will add? A record, in the sense the IP address, public IP address. The public IP address of your Ingress controller, which is exposed. Nothing but your node port, like nothing but the any node of IP address, public IP address. Any node, public IP address. Okay, so this is not a feasible solution in production, but now for my case I'll be using it. But in your case you have to deploy your Ingress controller with service type called load balancer. That is the appropriate solution in production. Okay, that a record, that load balancer a record will be added to your this particular domain. Okay, and that a record also will be added to this particular domain. Okay, So this is how it is. So whenever someone hits this particular domain, it will go to the DNS server, it will search the A record, and that A record will point to this particular server. It will come here. Once it is reached to the cluster, it knows how to transfer that particular packet to the actual application. Okay, so to this happen means if it is app1.sudhirdevops.tld, it should go to this application. If it is app2.sudhirdevops.tld, it should go to this particular application. So how is that possible? The ingress controller, we have to create a ingress rules. These rules are nothing but you will tell that if someone is hitting this particular domain, please redirect to this particular service. If someone is hitting this particular host, try to redirect to this particular service. That is what we are trying to say. Best example, I have already given the example of it. Let me show you. Here you can see this is your ingress rule which you are trying to add. Okay, some people will call it as a service as well. So when you try to create an ingress, here you can see the rules which are added for this host. You can see for this host called app1.sudhidevops.tld, you are redirecting to the backend service called app1-nginx, which is listing on 80 port number. Whatever you specify in the service, that port number. Okay, and here you can see this particular host app2.sudhidevops.tld will be redirected to the backend service called app2-nginx. This is the old way format of writing this ingress service rules actually, but in the new format this has been changed. You need to write service under that name, and under that you need to write ports, and under that you need to write the number. That I will show you now. You can see the example over here actually. Let me show that example. Yeah, so this is how the new format looks like this from 1.20 to 1 actually. It looks like this. Okay, so this is how it is. Same service, but here instead of writing service name, we are writing service. Under that we are writing name, and then we are writing ports. Under that you need to write your port number which your actual service is listening. Okay, so this is how it is. We are writing the path and we are writing the host as well. The prefix is this. Okay, so let us try to deploy this particular solution for us to access our application from outside, like app1.sudhirdevops.tld and app2.sudhirdevops.tld. So when you go to the browser and if you execute that, you have to get your application content. Okay, so how it looks, I've already documented it, that pictures as well. It looks like this. Okay, welcome to Sudhir DevOps app 1. Okay, if you look at your second application, it looks like this. Welcome to Sudhir DevOps app 2. Okay, so this is my final solution what I need for my cluster. Okay, Nginx Ingress Controller. So to deploy that particular Nginx Ingress Controller on your local setup, we have to go to the official document of Nginx Ingress. You can look at your installation documentation which is already present in this, already given this. Okay, you can go to my repo, you can just fork and you can use it. So you can go to this one, where is that Ingress Controller? Yeah, here it is. And if you read the documentation, everything was written what I've discussed right now, and this documentation is already referred here. Okay, you can just go through that. Okay, so now let's try to deploy this particular Nginx Ingress Controller. So where is your Nginx Ingress Controller? It is bare metal, right? So you have to click on this particular link. Okay, so it will redirect to that particular section, and you can just execute this command to deploy it. Okay, it is using this service, it is exposing this Ingress Controller of a service type called noteport by default. If you want to modify, first of all you have to download this YAML file, modify the changes, and then apply it. Okay, that's simple. So now I want to apply this, so copy this, it's already copied, and then apply. Okay, so what it does in the background, it will create a separate namespace called Nginx Ingress, Nginx-Ingress, Ingress or Ingress-Nginx, I guess, yeah, whatever it is. So it will create a separate namespace. All those application related Nginx Ingress Controller application related information will be available in a separate namespace. Okay, that's how. You can see it will be created one by one. You can see namespace is Nginx Ingress-Nginx. Okay, in that namespace only all these objects have been created. Okay, let us verify first. First of all, whenever you deploy it, first of all you have to verify whether these components are running properly or not. So kubectl get all -o wide, and which namespace it is? Ingress Nginx. You can see your Nginx Ingress controller is running, and these two pods have been done their job. It is a cron job actually, not a cron job, it is just a job. Okay, what is this job in the sense? To run this particular application, what else is needed, that will be created first. Okay, that is a responsibility of the job. Here you have to think one thing, we have to remember one thing. Though your pod is running, your container is not yet ready to accept the request. Okay, you can see 0/1. It has to be 1/1. Okay, so let's wait. You can see now it's 1/1, which means that it is ready to accept the request. Okay, now if you can see here, the service of your Nginx Ingress controller is 80 port number. Non-secure port number is enabled with 31838 port number to access from outside, and 30443 was opened for secure communication. So now if I go to the browser and if I just give my node IP address is 192.168.1.90. Okay, and then let me give this. What is the port number which was opened? 30443. 30443. Let's say HTTPS. Oh, sorry, there is some mistake. Okay, HTTPS 192.168.1.90 colon 30443. Okay, so advanced, proceed, then you will get this. Okay, obviously you will get this 404 not found, which means that you don't have any web application running on this particular port number right now. Okay, so this is what you have to get once Nginx was deployed. Now we need to deploy our actual applications, and then we have to create an ingress rule so that whenever you try to hit this particular IP address with this particular port number slash, okay, app1, it has to go to the my particular application, app1 application. Okay, later on I will show you how to add a DNS name. DNS we cannot register right away, but in order to ensure that it is working like a domain, you have to do one thing on your local system. I'm using Windows right now. I'll show you how to add a DNS entries in your /etc host file so that you can access through domain app1.sudhirdevops.tld. That's how you can access directly. Okay, so let me show you that as well once it is successfully verified. So to deploy that, okay, so you have to follow this documentation. Let me show you that. Let me close this, let me close this. Here you can see test app. Okay, just open this. You can copy this entire these two applications. Let me show you one by one. So I think I've already created Ingress. Yeah, you can open this Nginx deployment. You can see here I am creating totally two applications. I am deploying totally two applications. Okay, one application is Nginx, second application is also Nginx, but when you access this particular application called Nginx app 1, okay, web app 1, it will print you like welcome to Sudhir DevOps. In green color it will print this app 1. Okay, when you access this particular application, it will print welcome to Sudhir DevOps, and it will print app 2 in blue color. That's so simple. Okay, so now you have to remember these labels. These labels are important for your service to identify these particular pods. Okay, we are creating only one pod for each application. For this application one pod, and for this application also it's only one replica pod. Okay, so let's try to install. So kubectl create -f deployment.yaml. Now this is created. Let's verify whether it is up and running or not, and we will validate as well. Okay, all -o wide. You can see it's getting created. Let's wait. Services, it's not yet created. It's only the deployment. The deployment will create a replica set, and that replica set will take care of creating the number of ports. Okay. So init process, in the sense it is initializing this. We have init container. This init container is adding this particular context into my index.html. That volume is shared to your Nginx. So that's the reason it will display that. Okay. So I'm not going in depth of it. It has to be, yeah. So now if I access this particular pod, Okay, if I try to do a curl on this particular pod, I need to get welcome to Sudhir DevOps app1, which means that I was able to reach to my particular application through this pod IP address. We are doing multiple verifications, okay, one after the other. If you take your second pod IP address, you can say you have reached your applications. Now let us try to install. I want to expose this particular applications first through load balancer, internal load balancer called service. Okay, if tomorrow if you have increased the number of replicas of this any of the application, obviously it should redirect the traffic to equally to this particular application, right? So that will be taken care by your service. Okay, so I want to create a service as well. So the service, you can see, the first service is created is called as Nginx app1 Nginx, and this will identify your pods based on the label. Your pods are created with this particular label Nginx app1 Nginx app2. If you want the proof, let me show you that show labels. You can see your pod labels Nginx app1 Nginx app2. So with this labels only, your service will identify your pods. Okay, and your type is cluster IP. Even though if you don't write this, it will by default will take a cluster IP. Port number is nothing but the service port number which it should accept the request, and the target port number is nothing but what your pod is actually listening on. Okay, you can change this one port, but target port you cannot change. Why? Because your application is designed in such a way that by default it will listen on 80 port number. If you customize, then okay, you can modify this number. But if you are not customized and if you directly change this particular number here, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, yeah, only you are modifying metadata. It is not actually application who is listening. Okay, so remember that point. Now let me try to create this particular service. Okay, and this service is also created. Let's try to reach that particular application using service IP address. Okay, take this service IP, try to run curl command, and let's see whether you get a response. You got a response, and if you take this second service IP address, you need to get a response from the second application. You got a response. You can see here app1 app2. So till within the cluster you are able to reach this particular application with the service IP address from anywhere within the cluster. That is the intention of using cluster IP, right? Cluster IP in this and the IP address which will be reachable from anywhere on the node from the cluster. Okay, that's how it is. Any node in the cluster, you can reach to this particular IP, and the port number is 80. Now I want to expose this particular application outside. So for that we have to create a ingress rules. Okay, so I'll be using a simple example here, ingress rule with a domain. Okay, so let me first not to write any annotation. See what are the challenges we face. I will not write this. I think I have not updated my documentation as well. Let me show you rules here. Yeah, here it is written, but it is not updated. Okay, here I updated only this one. Actually multiple examples I have given for different scenarios, but here it is not updated. But actually I have to update this. Let me update my documentation as well. So this, okay, what is the meaning of this and why we have to use it, we will discuss. Okay, we will first fall into errors and then we will do it. I think errors and all, yeah, we can do it, but okay, let's not use this one redirection. I don't want to use, yeah, ingress. So we are trying to create an ingress rule for this particular Sudhir DevOps -ingress. This is the name of your ingress. Annotation, you are telling that I'm using this Nginx ingress controller to access my applications. Okay, so that is what you are defining in the annotation. Annotation is just a label, but more than that. So labels are used to change the functionality or understand the functionality of your object. But whereas labels which you define under this particular metadata, those are just a metadata. That's it. A key value pair. That's it. It doesn't have any functional, what do you say, approach. Whereas your annotations, not only it's like a label, but also it's like a functional approach which you can control your applications which you try to create. Okay. So here we are telling that we are using Nginx ingress controller. Okay, and then you can see the spec rules for this host. This is the backend service. For this particular host, this is the backend service. So when you try to access app1.sudhirdevops.tld and /app1, it will go to this particular service. If you try to access app2.sudhirdevopstld slash app2, it will go to this particular service. That should happen. Okay, so let us try to create this. So kubectl create -f ingress rule. Now your ingress rule will be created. Let's check that. kubectl-get ang-oy. You can see the ingress rule has been created. Let's wait. Okay, the rule has been created. Okay, yeah. If you want, you can just give a describe. If you don't pass any name of that ingress, by default it will pick all of them, or it will pick only one of them. Okay, so this is how it happens. So now your ingress rule has been created successfully and everything was done. So now if I go and if I want to access this particular application, let's try to use my IP address. See, one thing is like if you want to access your domain app1.sudhirdevopstld, it's not a registered domain, which means that if you go to the browser and if I access app1.sudhirdevopstld, doesn't know who is this. Okay, so that's a problem. It is not at all registered, this domain. Okay, so you cannot access this. So instead of going to the domain register, adding the domain, registering it, it will take 24 to 48 hours. In order for you to it to work, okay, you need to add your DNS entries in the /etc host file, which is nothing but a record. You need to add a record into your host file. Nothing but it looks like this. Let me show you. Okay, so you are adding your node IP address and your domain which you want to access. Okay, if you want to access app1, it is like this. If you want to access app2, same IP address, or you can give 91 IP address as well to access that particular application. Okay, so now how I can test it. Okay, so curl, let me try to do that. There is one simple solution. Okay, so here you can see you cannot access. Sorry, I just want to show you one thing before this. Where is that all? Not all actually, ingress namespace. I just want to show you, yeah. Here you need to concentrate on this if you want a secured communication. So any application should use this particular port number called 30443. Okay, so 30443, right? So now I will be using 30443. You can see you didn't got any response from that. Okay, it is showing you like not found. Nothing has been found. If you try to go app2, see what happens. Nothing. It is not at all resolved. At least here it worked. Means it is showing you nothing. Means it is not able to identify this particular page, or whatever the request we have passed, it's not appropriate. Okay. But here we have given a proper details, right? See, according to the ingress, kubectl describe ingress. Okay, if you look at this ingress, if someone is accessing this app1.sudhirdevopstld with the path called /app1, it should go to this particular service, and that service will redirect the traffic to this particular pod. This is how it should happen, but it is not happening right now. Okay, so what you have to do now, let me cross check once again. It's not. So the thing is, your ingress is listening on this public IP address, which means that this is the actual IP address of your ingress, which you need to add a record. But which a record I added? I added something like this particular node IP address, 192.168.1.90. So let me modify that. If your domain is not registered, but still if you want to test it, this is the way. Okay. And let me add for app2 as well. App2, this is the one. Okay, let's save this and come out. Now if I access this, you can see still it is not working. Let me go to the another node and let me try to execute this. You can see it's still not working. Okay, so 443 is not working. If I try to use app2, even this app2 is not working. What could be the reason? The first and foremost thing is nothing but here it's everything seems to be fine. I don't have any, what do you say, when you're working for the first time, okay, you look at this, everything seems to be fine. Okay, default backend, it's showing some error, we can fix it. But here the problem is I don't have any issues at all. Everything seems to be working fine. but why I was not able to reach this particular domains and all. So here, let me try to search with IP address. Let me try to give with IP address. So here the IP address is 192.168.1.91. Still no luck, right? If we give app2, no luck at all. Okay. So there is one another way to do it. Let me give something like app2. Now, here there is one more way. App1 for temporary solutions. Okay. 30443. You can see it's not at all working for me. Okay. So nowhere I was not able to reach. Okay, even if I resolve this. Okay, sorry, but the problem is here I gave a different port, right? You can see here you are able to connect to the SSL and all certification and all. It is using by default Ingress Controller certificate. We can modify this. I'll tell you how to fix this, but by default it will use some dummy certificates. Ingress Controller will use some dummy certificates which were auto generated when you have installed. But if you want your own specific certificate, signed approved certificate, then we have to follow a different procedure when we are deploying the Ingress Controller. But here our concern is you are not able to access your web applications. Okay, so now how to fix it? Okay, let me go to the browser as well. You might have some questions. Okay, let me refresh, and still it is not working. So let me try to give something like this one slash app1. So let me okay proceed. Here you can see it is displaying the same. Okay, now what I need to do? So here let me identify the mistake. Okay, so how to identify the mistake is the first and foremost question which everybody has, right? So I was able to reach to my application from service. Okay, from service I was not able. I was able to reach, but why not from my Nginx Ingress controller? So what went wrong? So let us try to identify that. Okay, so to identify that, always I suggest to look at the logs of this particular pod. Nginx Ingress Controller pod. When something is not working related to Nginx Ingress Controller, always try to look at this particular logs. Okay, so kubectl logs, which namespace it is? Ingress Nginx. You can see some logs. Someone is trying to access. I don't see any issues right now. Everything seems to be all okay, but still I was not able to access my application. You can see here event logs, everything is synced. Okay, it was able to access. This is working, this is working. So something is, you are able to reach to the pod. You can see here when someone is trying to call, it is going to the service, and from the service it is going to this particular pod IP address. Okay, but the response which you got is 404 not found. Okay, so that is the response which you got when someone is trying to access either 90 port number, or whenever someone is trying to reach this particular port number as well. That is a default behavior. So now I don't see any issues in this particular what do you say, Nginx Ingress controller. So what went wrong? What could be the reason? Okay, so let me try to refresh this once again and let me see, did it took some time to work? Okay, this is also not working for me. Let me try to find out. Okay, so let's try to resolve this. I think still it's not working. The problem is, let me just resolve that. Okay, so ingress rule. So here we need to add another indentation for redirection. Okay, so that redirection is nothing but this. Okay, so this you have to copy and you have to paste it here. Okay, once it is done, let me reapply this in the sense there are multiple ways. You have to delete the ingress rule and then you have to create, instead of, if you want to do from CLI in a single execution, then we have kubectl replace, okay, hyphen force hyphen f, and you can give your file name, okay, which you want to reapply. So what it does, it will delete the ingress rule and again it will add it. Okay, if you get some errors, just re-execute once again, no problem at all. See, there's a timeout, right? So let me try to re-execute this. Sometimes this could happen if your ingress controller is not reachable on this SVS. Okay, 10 seconds timeout was happened, so that's the reason it got came out from that particular connection. So let me do one thing. Let me just create it. Okay, I think it got deleted for sure. So now we are trying to create it. If it is the same issue, let me just check what happening. I think it is the same issue. Yeah. So let me check once again. It's my pods on this particular namespace. What happened to them? kubectl get ingress controllers. So these are running. Let me check the logs once again. If it shows me anything that something went wrong or something like that, so that would help me. Okay, so always remember to execute and see the logs as per the best practice. Okay, you can see here, here it got exception. You can see here reload. Okay, so something went wrong with this particular event. In this event we can see that Nginx configuration file was modified but it is not reloaded, so that's the reason it got failed. So there are some issues which was happened. Okay, so let me try to configure once again. Maybe in meantime this particular reconfigure was successful. Let me try to create it, this particular ingress rule. So now we can see it is successful. Here when we executed, it has some parallel. There was some error in reloading the configuration file. Okay, when I was executing that particular command. Okay, so after some time you can see here it got successfully reloaded. So that's the reason now I can continue in creating this ingress rule. So now it is created successfully. So now if you look at your Nginx ingress rules which you have created, you can see the IP address which was assigned. So this will be the A record for your domains, app1.sudhirdevopstld and app2.sudhirdevopstld. So this will be your what do you say, A records for this particular domains. Okay, so now let me verify internally, or I can go to the browser and I can just verify this particular access. So let me do that. So if I try to do a refresh, let me open a new tab or something like that. Okay, just open this, close this, go to this tab, incognito. Okay, so https ps 192.168.1.91 colon 30443 slash app1. Oh, still it is not working. Let's verify what happened exactly. Where is my annotation? Let me look at my ingress. kubectl get ing. This was successful, and if I look at my ingress YAML as output as YAML, is my annotation added? Yes, it is successfully added. It is redirected as well. Let me check internally with this particular command. You can see it is working fine, right? And app2, if I give this, it's not able to respond because here I gave wrong number. Okay, here it should be app2. Now you can see it's working. So app1 and app2 is able to respond to my request. So I can go to the browser and I can give something like incognito. I already gave it, right? Let me open that and refresh. So here what I can give, https, okay, app1 dot sudhir devops dot tld colon 30443, okay, slash app1. You can see it is just advanced proceed. Now we can see app1. How this was happened, how was I able to, as I earlier I told, app1.sudhidevops.tld is not at all registered. Nowhere it is registered. But how I was able to access, because in my local system, if I want to access this particular domain, first of all you have to know the A record. A record in the sense, as per the diagram which we have already discussed. Okay, as per the diagram, where's the diagram actually? Let me show you that. Yeah, here it is. As per this diagram, these domains are not at all registered, but still I want to access, in the sense whoever is trying to access, they have to add this particular domain with the A record, okay, in their local slash etc host file. But this IP address is also not a public IP. But within my network, which is nothing but my router, I got this IP address from my router. Actually, the nodes which I have used for my Kubernetes are using a bridge network. Bridge network is nothing but in Oracle VirtualBox. It will get an IP address from my router. actually. Okay, you can see this. Where is my networking? Let me show that. I'm using bridge, which is nothing but it is directly connected to my Wi-Fi to get the IP address for that particular node, which means that whoever is there in my network, whoever is connected to my network in my router network, everybody can access now app1.sudhidevops.tld. But one thing they have to do is nothing but they need to add the entries in the /etc host file, because it is not a public registered domain. It is for your testing purpose. So in my case, what I did in my /etc host file of my Ubuntu Windows machine, okay, what you have to do is nothing but open the notepad as administrator. Once you open that, go to the file path, which is nothing but Windows system32 drivers /etc host file. So once you open that, you can see here I added this. Okay, so once I added this, you can see here with what a record. See what this IP address is nothing but what you see here. Okay, so how will you come to know? You will come to know here. What are the IP address you have seen here? That IP address you need to add in your this particular host file and the domains which you want to access. Okay, so now it is like you have temporarily added into your host file to access this particular domains, so that it will redirect to this IP like a forward lookup zone, and then it will reach to that particular node. Okay, in public domains also it will happen in the background, right? So that's how it is. So now once it is this done, if I go to the browser and I was able to access, okay, if I want to access app2, and then if I give here app2, now you can see proceed, advanced, proceed. You can see here app2. So app1 and app2, both I was able to access. So this is how it is. So this is what we have achieved in this particular demo by accessing your applications from outside. So from my local system, I was able to reach the domains to my cluster where it is running. Okay, but in real time it will be a public IP address. The a record which was assigned to this particular ingress rule, right, that will be a public IP address. So for that, what you have to do, you have to ensure that your ingress controller is running with a load balancer. If you are using some particular cloud, or if you want to do on premises, technically you have to deploy your ingress controller with the service type called load balancer. Okay, so remember this particular point. So in the next demo, in the next session, actually, we will see how we can add TLS based authentication, which means that now it is insecure communication, right? So if you look at this particular certificate, these certificates are not at all valid. It is generated by your Kubernetes Ingress Controller. It is a fake certificates which are generated. Okay, so I want to use a valid certificates for my domain. Okay, so if someone is accessing HTTPS with this particular domain, they have to have a valid certificate. Okay, so how to do that, how I need to do that, everything we will see in the next demo. So that's all for this particular demo. Thank you.